What is up, guys? So today we are looking at how to end a game and actually win it. Kind of pretty important, right? Like, the whole point of the game is to try and win. So let's just make it a little bit easier. Now, before we actually kick off this video, I just want to say a big thank you again for 300,000 subscribers. And tomorrow on Saturday, I'm going to be streaming all day as kind of part of celebrating it and releasing my first ever proper merchandise. I think they came out pretty cool. We got some shirts and hoodies. So if you want to support me and grab some, there's a link down below. But hopefully I'll see a bunch of you tomorrow. Let's crack on with the video, shall we? So this is kind of more of like ending the game, so it's late game focused, but we will cover the basics of pushing your mid game lead as well. There are kind of three things you can do. So you can team fight, you can get dragons, or you can get towers. Team fighting is the riskiest way, but it is the easiest. You have the potential to lose the fight if teammates misplay, but it can lead to the others like dragons and towers if you win it. So just like in football or soccer, whatever if you're American, if it's a 2-on-1, I probably need to pass the ball to my teammate to get past that defender, and then it's up to him to shoot and score. If it's a 2-on-0, so there's no defender, then I can just ignore my teammate who, let's be honest, in solo queue is probably an idiot, and just shoot the ball myself. What we're trying to do with these objectives is just create a situation where we don't have that defender, right? We're putting less of a requirement on our team. Dragons, we get various buffs now, right? Help a bit more in the game. We can kind of get those stats, I guess, but the towers, especially outer towers, are 300 local gold. That's a good chunk of gold, so it helps to get ahead even more. Even though you probably won't be actively abusing it, it helps to open up the map more as well. You can flank easier. Basically, the enemy team is less protected. Now, even though that's a very simple set of three things, those are basically the things that you're going to focus on mid-game, really. Late game is a lot more complicated, and that's why I wanted to do this video. We're going to look at using Baron, Inhibs, and Elder Drake properly, the three easiest ways to win. In my opinion, there are 4 different ways to get a lead and end the game, but the first thing, before we can do any of that, is grouping up with your team. It doesn't matter if they are actually in the wrong place. You need to stay together as 5 because you can't get caught and throw the game that way. It's a lot harder for them. I guess they can do it and they probably will, but you know, it's harder, okay? It does suck having to like babysit and stuff, but it's part of the game. Even if the correct thing to do is pushing top lane, if 2 of your team go bot, then you have to go bot with them and just try to tell them we should be top. Now, the first actual thing is an early Baron. We're going to talk about a proper Baron play a bit later, but this is specifically an early or sneaky Baron. This is more achievable than people think. As long as you have like one tank who can absorb the damage, then you can do it early. The problem is just that it's more noticeable when everyone goes missing, and it's easier for the enemy team to stop. All you have to do is set up wards on the entrances to Baron. If they aren't reacting, then it's fine, you can take it. If they do, you just run away. The reason it's so good is because you can then just push down towers so easy. Like, they don't have the damage to wave clear. It's a free bunch of gold, and it snowballs a lot of games. Now we're going to get into the harder stuff though, how to actually properly end a game. So Baron and Elder Dragon are the 2 best ways to do this. They are the easiest ways to win. So if you're ever in doubt, just go for Baron or go for Elder Drake. Actually, our aim late game is to take an inhib. That opens up the game massively. The problem though is there are towers there and it's hard to dive. This is where these 2 beauties come in for 2 different reasons. Number 1, it forces the enemy team to come out of their base to stop us. We can then team fight them, and if they don't, then we just get it for free. The second thing is Baron and Elder Drake give us buffs which we can then use for the inhib. Baron is all about pushing and minions to bash down the tower. It's hard to wave clear against them, and it lets us hit the tower easier. The Elder Drake is crazy combat stats. It makes diving much easier, or actually something most people don't think about is it's basically a free Baron afterwards. Elder Drake is a massive advantage in a team fight, and it basically means if they come to try and stop you at Baron, then you're just going to turn and kill them. So it's really kind of free, and then after we have both of them, we can go and get inhibs with the Baron buff and Elder buff. In a really simple way to think of it, Elder is for fighting, Baron is for pushing. And also, just a side note about the Elder Dragon, that yes, it's way more effective with more dragons earlier into the game, but it's still really overpowered on its own. Even if you have no dragons before it spawns, it should still be your priority. Take it and crap on a team fight. So the most common ways to take these guys is to deny the vision and let the enemy team come into you. I'm going to put these on screen so you can see them, but on Dragon on blue side, you want to ward here and here, pink here, and sweep here. This means we have both entrances warded to see them coming. We pink here, which is the most common ward spot for the enemy team, and it's also good if a fight happens because we don't like break line of sight or anything. And we're sweeping the pit because it can cover a larger area than a pink ward, and also the surrounding area around the pit as well. For Dragon on red side, we want to ward here and here, pink same place, and sweeper same place. The warding is going to cover the most common entrance and a steal attempt attempt as well. For Baron, it's very similar to Dragon. On blue side, ward here and here, pink here, and sweep the pit. For Baron on red side, we're going to ward here and here, pink here, and sweep the pit again. Warding is actually more important on blue side Dragon and red side Baron because we have more entrances to cover and more brush that can break line of sight. Anyway, so once you have the vision set up like this, you can sit and wait for them to fight, or you can just do the Baron. Now make sure you turn and fight if they do come, okay? Late game death timers are so long that they can probably take an inhib off you dying, and that is not going to be worth. Once you have these buffs, you just push down a lane and you try to take their inhibitors. So now we're actually going to look at towers and inhibs. Now technically this is the easiest way to win a game, but obviously it's a lot of harder, so it's more reliable going for the Baron and Elder Drake. Sometimes we get a dream game where you can just brute force an inhib down if you're far enough ahead. That's great, but if not, that is where the Dragon and Baron come in. Those buffs will allow you to team fight or push either way, end up getting it. Now this is where the more tricky part comes in though. What do you do when you have an inhibitor down? How do you win the game from that? So there are two different things, but basically an inhibitor at its core, like what it actually is now a pushing lane, constant pressure like a split pusher. If we didn't have to take objectives to get that first inhib, then we can let that lane push and we can try to bait Baron or Elder Drake like we did before. It's really easy because eventually someone has to go and deal with those minions, right? So they either come in and you can fight them, you can win the team fight, or you can just run away and let the minions push. This is actually why bot lane inhibitor is probably the most valuable in the game. Maybe top now with Elder Drake as well, but it's the furthest point away from the objectives and it's also the furthest away from another lane. This is where we get the more important thing, okay? Taking a second or a third inhibitor. In most of our games, I think we can agree we take the mid inhib first. That's probably the most common, but it's not actually the best for setting up the rest of the game. Someone can clear the wave in mid lane and then run to bottom or top where we're pushing. Taking bot lane and then going top to push for another inhib means that there's a bigger distance to travel if we dive. Now we have two options when an inhib actually goes down. We either dive or we let the minions push. Minions pushing is way less risky, but not always the best option just because they can have a TP champion to deal with it. The best option is actually a little bit of both. So first off, we're going to take the bot lane inhibitor with Baron or whatever. Then we go top lane and we start pushing that wave. We're going to wait for the super minions to push bot and someone to go and deal with them. Even if they do actually have TP, that is a long cast time. So we're pushing the top lane. If we can hit the tower, then that's ideal, and 90% of the time we can get it uncontested. But if not, then we have to wait for that person to show bot lane dealing with the supers and then dive 5v4. That is why inhibs are really the easiest way to win a game. You can get objectives from them, or you can get other inhibs when you play it correctly. The last thing I want to talk about is just playstyle a little bit, what your team is good at. This will affect how you play the other three we've already talked about. There are three really common playstyles, so team fighting, big ultimates, or you're just far enough ahead to not care anymore and you want to fight people. This is the easiest playstyle by far and the one I think you should probably go for if you want to climb. Poke is another option. It's more when you have long cooldowns like a Lux or something like that, and that's more of a kitey kind of style. Split push is the hardest to pull off by far. One person goes to the opposite side of the map, attracts attention, and lets the other four do things. Now in 99% of games though, I'd suggest grouping as 5 and focusing on the previous 3 things. Even with poke teams or an ideal split pusher, there's less risk being together. You can't get caught out as much. So in summary, if you're a little bit confused, basically if you're having trouble pushing or ending, focus on the Elder Dragon and Baron and get them. Inhibs are just magic. Take one and push on the opposite side of the map, or take objectives from the pressure you get. Elder Dragon is just overpowered even if you don't have the other dragons before, and Baron is great for pushing, so always try to have it when you push if you're struggling to end. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope it helps you climb a little bit better. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share. Check out my merch stuff down in the comments below, but that's all for now, so let's end it with the robots.